Welcome, everybody. Today we have back on the show Darrell Becker. Darrell Becker is the Chief Marketing Officer of Content Safe, a company which distributes your content on the various platforms, which is so important in these days in this age of censorship. There has been a real concerted attack on freedom of speech, especially in mainstream media, of course, but also the big tech platforms, which everybody kind of uses these days, especially content creators. So, Darrell, for people who don't know about the company, tell us a little bit about it.
Content Safe, we're a company that does video uploads and other services for those folks in the alternative media world, folks making media that gets censored. So here's the thing that we do is just making sure that your videos just automatically get uploaded to BitChute and Odyssey and Rumble and Brighteon and a host of other places where they're just not censoring right now. And we have ways of getting it up there on the big tech platforms like, YouTube and Facebook and Instagram and TikTok. But, obviously those places get hit hard and got to kind of risk manage that type of stuff. So yeah, we definitely work for you in the alternative media, just trying to get everything out there replicated, because folks like Mark here, if Mark's like a one-man show, then for him to upload to all the places, that can take a lot of time. And places like BitChute, you'll hit upload failed. You guys don't know this if you haven't tried it, you'll hit upload failed, wait enough so that you'll just give up. But we make it so that the content producer, you make it something like Mark Tassi show, he just uploads to one place and then it goes to all the places, grows the audience, more eyes and ears on the message, solving problems. So that's one thing that I do.
Yeah. And well, I mean, that is become very important for me. When I started this whole thing, what's it, 9 years ago now, I mean, it was like YouTube. That was the go-to. But then after the March 2020 COVID fiasco hit, and I sort of transitioned my channel from a health and fitness channel basically into getting more into medical issues, which was still health related, but I found that the censorship was pretty brutal. My videos started to be censored. I started to get the flags, and then they started removing content. And then I found I had to branch out, of course, into other platforms like Rumble, like BitChute. But like you said, it's a challenge. You have to, it's time consuming, and each platform has its own limits. BitChute doesn't have as high of file limits as other platforms. So you run into, upload has failed because the video size is too big or something like that, or the file size is too big. So you take care of all of that, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, that's our job is, our clients pay us, and then, each month we have all the destinations of where they want to go, and whether it's a show every day, like some people do like 5 days a week or 7 days a week, and some people do one show a week or less, some people just bi-weekly or even one fat show monthly. We just know when, we have trackers for that. I've actually been looking behind the scenes at our company, like starting to work admin there, and behind the scenes, like there's a system that's like tracking every single channel. It's tracking your Rumble channel, if that's the destination, or it's tracking your YouTube channel. And if there's something like meaning it's checking every 5 minutes, that's what we're automatically doing. So as soon as you put something up, we're like up, and our system starts to go into play to start to upload it to the destinations.
Wow.
And you can't really do that on your own, Mark.
No, you can't. You can't.
Well, unless you're going to pay for the development and tech team to build your own content safe. So.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
right.
You can do it that
Exactly.
way,
So it's all automated. It's a whole automated system.
It is, except for then you have the back boys like me checking to make sure, because these companies like BitChute, they're not really playing nice with us. whether at Content Safe or small, producers like you, they're not really like giving us an audience. They're not giving you an audience. They're not giving us an audience as far as saying, hey, what do you want more of or less of? How are we messing up? Not really asking those questions. They're
Yeah.
business as usual over there.
Yeah.
That it's a tricky thing to get an audience with the king, as you know. So, the question we always love to find out
It's
is, so like, what stuff have you had censored recently? Like,
well, I used to use Instagram, for instance, for photography. I'm a photographer and kind of semi-professional. I have done it professionally, but it's more or less just a serious hobby. But I like to share my stuff, so Instagram is a good place for that. But in the stories, I've gotten a lot more political, and I've taken a stance on medical freedom, obviously, which is the reason I started this podcast, was really for medical freedom. And so, I mean, if you're right leaning or more conservative leaning, you're going to get censored. So, what Instagram does and what all these big tech platforms do is they kind of stifle more conservative content, obviously. And it doesn't even have to break their community guidelines, whatever that's supposed to mean. It's just a nice way of saying censorship. But yeah, I mean, so I've been heavily shadow banned on Instagram, but a week before Trump came back, my Instagram account was completely banned. And I wasn't told why. It was just gone. That was it. So yeah, I had my Instagram account banned, and I started a new Instagram account. And in the past week, I've already been shadow banned again.
yeah, that's
It's
the
they
hard
used to let you
place.
know. They used to let you know when they shadow banned you, when they had sort of a legitimate reason in their mind. But now they just shadow ban you if you're not really posting anything that really violates their community guidelines. But if it has a conservative slant, they're going to shadow ban you. And this is really, a real smack in the face after Zuckerberg made his proclamation that he was going to do away with fact checkers and how he supports free speech. So I just had and I noticed you post a lot on Facebook, a lot of good stuff. I follow you on Facebook. But yeah, I had a post fact checked yesterday on Facebook. So I don't know. He's just trying to save face. He doesn't swing. He doesn't want to swing from a rope. I don't know what that's about, but he really, you know, what did a 180-degree shift right after Trump won the election. But whatever he's been doing before, the censorship tactics are still in place. Is what I'm
You
trying to
know,
say.
this is such a common thing, right? You get a big billionaire who goes up on Joe Rogan and he's like, "Trust me, bro. I was on Rogan. I'm one of you now, you know?" And
Oh
he
yeah,
goes up
yeah.
there, Rogan throws softball questions to him,
Oh
okay? Doesn't
man,
push back at all on like
not
real
at all.
obvious things, like as if I don't know the programming in him or the gun pointed at him or whatever it is, or I don't know what the reasons are. I don't know what Rogan is or if he's a real human or not, but let's pretend Rogan's a human. So for whatever reason, as he's always claimed in the past, I'm not smart. And he shows it at these moments because he throws softball questions to someone like Mark Zuckerberg. And there's a perfect opportunity. He did the same thing when the head of Twitter, that was Jack Dorsey, was on, just softball questions and stuff. But he did have on someone who was smarter. That was Tim Pool to throw actual hardball questions for that little episode. And obviously, the smart move, then, Jack Dorsey just had on his, mouthpiece lawyer woman to just go ahead and basically make sure to unanswer and make non-answers to all of Tim Pool's very valid questions and concerns. So this is
Yeah.
it's a common tactic, but I mean, what kind of goes through this one, like that, like kind of looks through it. It's this thing called critical thinking with a method, right? So like,
Yeah.
I love asking people this question. Do you think you're a critical thinker, Mark?
I do, but I'm kind of like a street. I've learned it on the street, but it is a real science.
I mean, do you have a method that you could sort of spell out in maybe 3 sentences or less of your method of?
Probably not. I'm probably not. Yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, it's
I mean,
kind
if
of
I
like,
thought about it, I could word it, but I know there's things like the trivium where it's already laid out in
yeah, I
very
mean,
definite steps.
yeah, so if all you need to do is know the trivia method of critical thinking, it's kind of hard for me to unremember it. Once you know
Yeah.
something, it's like hard to unknow
Yeah.
it. It's like I was said,
Yeah.
are you a musician? All right. Can you read and write music? And like if the person said no, actually, it's like saying, are you literate? It's like, yes. Okay. Can you read and write books? It's like, no, then you're not really literate. Well, critical thinking works like that too. If you can't define your method, you're kind of flailing around, and this is what people count on, like people like Zuckerberg, people like Jack Dorsey, who's less relevant now, but the major people who are trying to like orchestrate thought, the perception managers, right? They want you to not have a critical thinking method. They also
Oh, of
want you to
course.
they want you to be emotionally out of balance. And then,
Emotionally. I mean, absolutely. I mean, when you look at people that are still supporting these psyops or whatever, still fooled by it, they're really highly emotional people. It's almost like they don't even want to, like you mentioned logic, and they kind of get taken aback by it, by just the word logic. They're
that's thanks to
basing
you know, the publicity that started back in the 60s with Leonard Nimoy's portrayal of Mr. Spock on Star
right,
Trek. See, like you
right,
had basically that version of cold and emotionless and also very communist sounding with, the greater
unfeeling.
good for the greater number nonsense,
Yeah. Hmm.
and
Right,
question and not questioning
right.
authority. And this of course is the opposite of actually studying informal, sometimes formal logic. But yeah, like if you don't have an emotional balancing skill, a set of methods to balance your emotional terrain, it's going to be even hard for you to learn, to do anything. You'll be like slowed down basically. You can learn critical thinking really, really well. As I've heard some people say, you can rock the trivia method of critical thinking, and then methods of everything else, including emotional balancing, will just be opened up. Like the world is opened up to you when you know a method to think critically. But for a lot of people, certainly like my clients and students, I frequently choose to teach them emotional balancing skills first and then critical thinking second. That's usually the way. And I wasn't planning on like, doing a whole let me teach your audience how to do that one, though I can like tap into it, like I can allude to it, but I think I for sure I can go down that road. I think the main part was just I think I want more people to be anti-fragile. You know that word? You know?
Ah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean,
This is the real issue. I mean, the mainstream media is appealing to the emotions of people, not the logic or logical inquiry.
well, I mean, some of the audience might not know the word anti-fragile, the term, right? Like they might not know Bitcoin and anti-fragile, but I'll give a quick version. So if you have a system that's open source, that's the Bitcoin blockchain, and you've had now since 2009 all kinds of people trying to hack it and crack it and try to make a counterfeit Bitcoin transaction happen, and all these different people trying to just like buy the system and get in there and like see if they could set up nodes on the sly and try to like counterfeit a transaction. And so it's been this many years, Mark, this many years, and the more they try to do it, the stronger the Bitcoin ecosystem is, the more robust it is. That's the theory of anti-fragile, meaning you bang it
Yeah.
with a hammer, and unlike a
Right.
glass, like
Right. Right.
a glass
Right.
bowl would shatter. In this case, it's like you bang it with a hammer, it gets stronger. It's like some type of Marvel superheroes metal that just gets like stronger with each time. Like it adapts. It's like the Borg basically. It adapts and gets stronger. And that's what I want your audience to be like that, where they're like, oh, what is the trivia method of critical thinking? What is Darrell referring to? What is an emotional balancing skill set? What does that mean? You know, and like to go off and research it, that's and I know you can all, everyone out there, you can look up the trivia method of critical thinking. I've done presentations on it. Lots of people have done presentations on it. But I mean, do you have a method to balance your emotional terrain? How do you do it? Everyone's got a method. Now this one's real. I'm sure everyone's got a method, right?
Well, I guess it goes back to my lifestyle,
Right.
Uh, I have a pretty solid lifestyle,
But you're in
and
Cambodia?
I'm in Cambodia. Yeah.
Oh man, I mean, there's
I mean,
resources.
I try not to take the easy way. I try to,
You mean drugs?
well, anything like that. You know what I mean? It's a disciplined lifestyle, put it that way.
Oh,
And,
that's good. Yeah, that would be like the Stoic answer. A disciplined lifestyle. It does, if you can define what disciplined lifestyle means in a tangible way, that probably would result in emotional balancing, you know?
yeah, there was a study that showed that every time you say no to yourself or something you don't want to do, but you feel like you should do it because it's beneficial, like say you say, I'm going to run 5 miles, I'm going to start at 6 o'clock every morning, and you do it, you do that, there's a part of your brain that actually grows. It actually, there's a physical aspect of the brain that's connected with will. And I just my approach is kind of like a Dave Goggins kind of approach in a way. I mean, I am an athlete and I do train regularly, and yeah, I follow a fairly strict type of lifestyle. That has a lot to do with it.
Yeah, and that'll help a long ways. I think that's a good part of it. I think that
I mean, trying to get myself to not be triggered. I mean, that's another thing. And that's something that I've worked on my whole life. There are times where I do allow myself to be triggered. It just happened just recently, which I feel really bad about. I felt really bad about that. I said, why did I react? It's kind of learning to not be reactive, to various situations, which are going to come up, right? It's going to come up.
and I think trying to suppress things to try to not do something is going to be part of the problem for most people, and that would include all of us, you and me as well. So thankfully, back in 2009, especially 2010 and beyond, I found a bunch of people who articulated the method of nonviolent communication, and
Yeah.
I began to apply it internally. So I'm sure you know about Kung Fu and martial arts, and you probably can imagine that people who focus on the exterior and very combat aspects of the martial arts, if they are neglecting their internal training, they're kind of like they could be very muscle bound and strong and stuff like that,
Yeah.
but there'll be key weak points energetically that are exploitable in their ability. That so real professional fighters, of course, they are very usually almost always to a T calm, like as much as possible in their life, and then especially at the moment of combat or simulated combat of sparring. So it's the same kind of thing. Internal application of the nonviolent communication method that Marshall Rosenberg made. I found that method is a really amazing way, and it's a really profoundly useful way if you just learn it and teach it to yourself that way, as an inside job, not as an exterior method of communication, not until you get good at the internal part of it. When you get good at the internal part of it, fine. Now you can use that to understand other people, and now you can be less triggered by what they say and do. But it's a
Yeah.
method out there. So, I'm just alluding to these kind of things. And unfortunately, the words that Marshall Rosenberg used to call his components of his method their observations, feelings, needs, and requests. That's half of the method that he taught right there. So I just sped through half of that book of his. So basically, the problem is people are going to conflate needs and requests as external, and they're not also needs. They can be conflating as needy, as being a needy person, right? Kind of grasping. And
Yeah, well, people they use the term need kind of loosely, I think. When you examine some of the things that they call needs, I'm not quite so sure that they're actually needs. Like
it's
it's
a
kind of
jargon
somebody.
term. Yeah, it's not
Hmm?
in the parlance. If you're in a science, right, like in the science of virology, isolation has nothing to do with actually separating from all other things. Isolation in
Yeah.
virology has to do with combining a variety of elements together and making an assumption. It's a fraudulent science. That's why it's virology is
Well,
fraudulent science because of that. Okay.
they've been loose with the definition, very loose.
Right. So this is the way it is for all, I would say, like thinking endeavors, is they come up with jargon terms. In nonviolent
Yeah.
communication, the jargon term called needs is actually referring to the abstract qualities that are desired by a person. And they're abstract and they're qualities like connection, safety, security, achievement, autonomy and freedom, and of course, equality and justice. There's harmony, of course. There's all these qualities, but you can't have a harmonyometer. Like how harmonious is it between me and Mark right now? It's like you can feel it, but you can't really have a machine to measure it. It's intangible. And that's what I mean by their intangible qualities that all people have learned to desire a small amount of or a greater amount of, depending on what happened to them in their life. But as babies,
Yeah.
we started with the same qualities. As babies, we had the same desires for being held, which is connection, the same desire
Right.
for nourishment, the same sense of safety and security and comfort, and
Right.
and also stimulation. That's why babies will go nuts if you don't carry them around a bunch and show them the world.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
so there's all these things. We start with the same values. I like to call them values. I like to throw away the stupid term needs because it's just confusing for people. I just call them their
It
values.
is
Yeah.
confusing because
Yeah.
eating is a need, breathing is a need, sleeping
Yeah.
is a need. So when you start calling these other things needs, it kind of gets, it's kind of muddy water, isn't it?
Yeah. Originally, when he wrote this stuff out, I guess it was the late 70s, early 80s, Marshall Rosenberg called them action-oriented wants. And if ever there was a clunky term, that's a clunky term. But if he had just
Well,
simply
that's more accurate, I think. It is a
it is.
want.
It is. It's something
Uh,
that you want. It's action-oriented,
Although
meaning
it is debatable to say that the affection of an infant isn't a need. I mean, obviously, well, it depends on how you define need. Is it, it's,
right.
they
See,
do need that. Humans do need that.
yeah, no, you can for sure make a strong case that there are actual needs out there, and for sure the survival preparedness community is very focused on the five core survival needs, which I agree with. They're like the one of them is on your hat there. You know,
Well,
basic
you
about
could actually
security.
say they're physical needs, and then
Right.
there are kind of mental, emotional type needs or psychological needs, you could say.
Right.
And I think, yeah, the psychological needs are important. Like they've done studies on monkeys and they've isolated monkeys and that really messed them up. Like, there's a need for the child or the monkey, the young monkey to have certain touch, and affection and attention to properly develop in a balanced way.
And so, like I said, I agree with you, and there are needs, but basically, if you flip it over to say, okay, those are values, they're abstract qualities that are desired, that's good to know. And then
Mm.
from there, instead of requests, the fourth quadrant of what Marshall Rosenberg taught back then, it's better, really, I think, more effective to look at that as strategies and actions. And that can include making a request of someone else. But as adults, we all learn that guess what? If you make too many requests of other adults, then it's going to be a burden upon them. Children
Right.
make lots of requests because they're trying to figure out the world. That is very acceptable and understandable. All children are going to make
Right.
lots and lots of requests, but an adult can actually learn to make a strategy and take action independent of the needs of other men and women. Like that, literally, they can actually find answers now better than ever. And then, of course, when needed, the strategy can include actually seeking out someone else's help, but not necessarily as the given is always making a request. So now you just put it into action. You got observations, you have the core feelings. This is the other part that's confusing to people who are not in touch with their emotions, a lot of those. And then you have the values, which then leads to taking a strategy in action, making something like that. That's abstract stuff. This is like all heady stuff. Can I give an example?
Yeah.
Because that's like I already lost people who can't they can't flow in their head like I can, and I'm just gonna give them the verbal middle finger right now. You can't follow me because you're slow. Okay, so no, it's my job to communicate better. That's my job. So it's an easy way. I got this message all of a sudden a couple days ago. Hey, I'm in the waiting room. So are you going to be there for the show? It's like, and I was like, oh my God, like so this is all in observations, meaning I got the message. I'm in the waiting room. It's like, here's the deal. Okay, I thought the show was 1 week later. And I'm like working. I see my acupuncture client is pulling up right here. Did I double book myself? What do I do? Am I going to lose my spot on this show? This is it's a big show. Like I need it to be. So I have all these thoughts going on. This is all observations. Second quadrant, my core emotions. You get 4 emotions. I'm feeling the fear of I'm going to lose the spot. I'm feeling I'm feeling the frustration, that I messed up. Okay. And here's the other deal. Going back to observations, I went back to my email. I saw that indeed in the email I was scheduled for next week. I was in the right, and I sent I could even send a screenshot of that email to say, hey, what's up? I'm scheduled, not ready. Be ready in 2 hours though. Does that work?
Yeah.
So I don't know, but that's already I have some little bit of frustration, guy's getting it wrong, he's messed up. What do I do as the
Yeah.
client?
Yeah.
And I have to deal with this right now because the client's about to walk up to the door. So I'm feeling the frustration. I feel the fear. Here's that third quadrant. I wanted clear communication. I wanted harmony. I want, and I'm not getting it. I wanted to effectiveness, being effectively scheduling a show and getting on a big show, promoting all that. I wanted to be effective. I wanted harmony. I wanted connection. I wanted clear communication. So now my quadrant 4, what am I gonna do? And so my strategy is to send him a screenshot of the previous email showing that I was booked for next week, and to ask if he's available in 2 hours. And
Right.
and he was. And he apologizes, and now I go back through and I'm feeling happy. I'm going to be on the show. I didn't miss everything. I'm going to get to be communicating and connecting. This is the quick version of going through the quadrants. That's part of the skill set. And yeah. There are other methods that are more complex.
As opposed to being triggered and emotional, uncontrolled emotion.
Yeah. There's always going to be things beyond the immediate capability of handling that out externally, meaning the external events are going to happen. It's how we respond to them. Between stimulus and response, there is a space, and in that space is our ability to choose our response. And in our response, there is our freedom. That's often a quote to, this one, a Holocaust survivor. It's a famous quote, and it might not be belonging to who we find it out there on, But that's like the result of it is like this. How do you want to respond? How do you want to show up? You know? So,
Right. Yeah.
uh,
Which is so important.
yeah.
Uh, yeah, because you know, like I said, I got triggered last week. I don't even know if I want to mention it. It's kind of embarrassing, you know. Um, but I lost patience, and you know, in retrospect, I thought, well, there were definitely other ways of handling it, you know, and acting out has consequences too, you know, and on various levels. Why don't you touch a bit more on the whole critical thinking process? I mean, I think that's the most important thing right now. What we're seeing, we see this bifurcation of society. People who have completely gone in 100% still with these psyops, which are designed to mislead people, and the media is completely geared toward that. How do we? What's a logical method of seeing through this?
So it's really easy to look up the trivia method of critical thinking, but you
Yeah.
get lost in the weeds. It's pretty simple.
Quickly, what are the steps?
It starts with what's called general grammar, but it really is about collecting the data. It's about whatever the topic is, asking and answering, researching who, what, where, when questions. Enough to get you the gist of it. Like building a fire, basically you need to know what is paper, small tinder, bigger tinder, small sticks, small logs, bigger logs. What are the components of fire? A lighter or some fire source. You know, like what does wind have to do with fire? You know, like this is the grammar. This is the grammar of building a fire. It's the knowledge part. It is basic knowledge. It's data. Step two, you're going to call logic. It's about understanding. It's about putting the data into a format. That's why it's called information. You're putting it in a format. It's finding out and asking and answering why questions. Mark, why does it work for to build a fire where you start with paper and small tinder and then you work towards larger and larger pieces of wood? Why does it not work the other way, where you start with large pieces of wood and then try to put paper on top of that? Why does that not work? Why is it hard with the wind blowing and the rain blowing? Why is that a problem? And like, I know it sounds obvious to people who built fires, but there's a lot of things out there that if you haven't done them, there's a logic to it. Meaning this is the way it works. This is the way it works sometimes. This is the way it will almost never work. That's
Yeah.
asking and answering why questions. This includes knowing the logical fallacies. Definitely this one is to look up. Learn at least 12 logical fallacies. There are the informal logical fallacies, such as the appeal to authority and the appeal to the majority, the appeal to tradition. These are types of appeals. The non sequitur does not follow. The circular reasoning. There's a whole lot of logical fallacies.
Yeah.
At least 42. You can like Google 42 fallacies and you'll find like the major ones that way. Though, like I said, if you could just memorize 12 of them, you'll be doing just fine. And then anytime that you're listening or taking in anything reading wise, you can see, is it using one of these fallacies? They are a virus scanner for your mind. They're a way of flagging things what's potentially a problem that could, it might or might not lead to faulty conclusions. That's why they're logical fallacies. Keep in mind, the fallacy is one of the fallacies. That's the one where because someone because a source gave a fallacy before, that means that all the other things are also fallacies, which does not follow. Because it could be true now, but it was false and the
Right.
other things were false in the past.
You
Doesn't
see
matter.
that one.
Yeah, does
I
not
see
matter.
that one.
That would also be
Yeah.
part of poisoning the well, like where someone gave false information before, so the entire well is poisoned, and that's a fallacy. So, these are ways of understanding. This is called understanding. Whereas the grammar work of the data, getting your glossary of terms, that's, you know, basically that's your knowledge. And then understanding, that's your logic. That's figuring out like, why do you put the fire together this way? And your final step is called classical rhetoric. And it's also, if it produces a predictable, desirable result, it's called wisdom. So basically that is demonstrating how. That's, I'm going to show you. I'm going to make a video. I'm going to show you how I make a fire. I'm going to show you the parts. I'm going to show you the method that I'm putting it together. Guess what? There's a multiple different methods that'll work, but this is one of them. And then here's the final result. Voila, fire. And
so that's the application of the method based on the data.
But
based on the data.
But rhetoric is often, you know, the classical rhetoric is often about describing the process. It's about communicating the process. And that is indeed part of it, like to, I would say, coherently describe the method of emotional balancing that I just said before in the show. That's what, you know, it was on me to coherently explain that to you and your audience. If I didn't do that correctly, then the message didn't get through because I used too many big words, or maybe I made it somehow too long or too boring or something, or not interesting or not relatable, all of those things. So there's actually a thing called the rhetorical triangle. It's this triangle of balance where the author, that's me, is balancing the message, that's these words, with the audience, that's you and everyone watching the show. That's the rhetorical triangle. This is the balancing of changing the message, tracking the audience. It's constant tracking your posture, your attention span. You know, in real life, I've got everything to really check. I got a video here I'm looking at, but you know, if I could see the whole thing, and the same thing, if I was just tracking like a whole audience, if I was here in front of a podium with like a lot of people, I could track to see, are they with me? Are they laughing at my joke or are they not? You know, I had to see like that, you know.
Right.
So
right.
The rhetorical triangle is part of that, and it's surrounded by this circle. Circle is called context. Why is this important and relevant? What's going on right now?
Yeah.
Like the political situation, this, I don't know, pros and cons, you know, got good things and hopeful things and who knows things happening for this next interesting situation of politically what's happened. And I like to remain cautiously optimistic while at the same time focused on where is my power, which is of course my own life, you know.
Well, that's it, right? I mean, that's the whole crux of it.
Yeah.
It's not politics, is it? It's our own individual sovereignty that's going to make the difference.
Yeah. So I've given this one before to people, the trivia method of critical thinking. It's probably more than 2,500 years old, though Aristotle worked on it a lot, for sure. Thomas Aquinas back in AD 700 worked on it a bunch. You know, it's really been reworked many times. I think there's been many people modernly who've just like found over 200 logical fallacies. Like I said, that might be overkill because they're really, each of them are subcategories of other fallacies.
Right.
It's nice just to like, if you could just possibly know 10, there's certainly many memes that show the logical fallacies out there. You know, I've posted some, you know.
Yeah, you post a lot. You post a lot of that stuff. But context is so important, right? And I mean, that's what the media does. It takes things out of context. Like this recent fiasco with Elon Musk, I suppose you're aware of.
Which one? Like, please.
The Nazi salute fiasco.
Oh, that one. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, for that matter, then Superman has been doing the Nazi salute too, I guess.
Wow. I mean,
away.
Yeah, it's appeal to the emotions of people and taking something completely out of, but people are completely buying this, man. I mean, on Facebook, if that's any, people are hardcore that he's a Nazi and that's a Nazi salute, which is just madness to me.
Yeah, well, you know, if you want to believe something, you can.
Well, that's it.
I think that there's much bigger concerns. I would say, like, for example, if the tweets that come from Musk were really from Musk, or not some robot regarding being pro-vaccine, I'd say that that's a lot more concerning, you know. You
Yeah.
know? Uh,
But that crew doesn't seem to be too concerned about that because, probably the people who have are insisting that that was a Nazi salute probably had 3 or 4 shots on average.
yeah, that's true. Uh,
I
that's why
mean, they've fallen for that psyop too.
it's a common thing to say, "Wow, you sound vaccinated, bro." You know, you know, which it does not build a bridge of empathy usually between me and the person if I write that. So I don't know. You're probably not going to catch me writing it. You could catch me thinking it, but that's different. That was private. So
Before
yeah.
we exit, the medical freedom thing, where do you think we're headed with that? Does it look promising with the new administration anyway? I know Trump just did away with the mandate for legal immigrants. They no longer have to have the COVID shot, and that was mandatory just before this week, actually.
There's one good step. I mean, the next ones are to get rid of the rest of the immigration vaccinations and
Absolutely.
vaccinations in general. But yeah, I think that it's like decentralized solutions, just the same way with decentralized wealth storage, a la Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. Decentralized solutions keep going. I mean, at this point, we're going to soon see all of search engines be replaced with AI engines
Oh
because
yeah,
they're better at it.
it's already happening. I mean, that's what that's what the big tech is using. They're using AI to find certain keywords and whatnot to censor.
Yep, it's begun, but it hasn't completely replaced the fact of, SEO is not gone yet. It's not quite like that yet, and there still is search engine optimization and fronting up certain sites, and then
Right.
obviously censorship and burying other sites. But freedom is what people can grab onto and utilize. It's choice, it's volition. Medical freedom is the same thing. So when more people know of options, they can find the options and then they can choose the options. If people are doing the same old thing, which is avoiding the doctor because they have a bad feeling about it, that's the majority of men and a growing number of women. They avoid going to a doctor because they have a bad feeling about it. But more people are learning that there are better places to go for real healthcare to solve your chronic healthcare problems. There are people who have found solutions to that in the holistic healthcare world, this world of professionals out there who have been labeled as alternative medicine. But of course, the reality is they're effective medicine. That's a lot more closer to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that there's a lot more people being aware of solutions. It's kind of like people who would actually spend the time going through the end of COVID. It's the endofcovid.com. That's a huge presentation
Yeah.
by Alex Zach that just
Mm-hmm.
helps to understand. If you go through that, you'll understand, wow, maybe if you have some humility, maybe you were wrong about what you think about the
Well,
way
that's the
health
thing,
and
isn't it?
disease works.
That's the key word, isn't it? That's the bottom line, humility.
Uh-huh. Well, also
Uh,
take curiosity too. First, you need to,
Curiosity. Yeah.
could you be
Mm-hmm.
curious? Are you interested in finding out? And then the second step is,
Also, bravery,
courage. Yeah. Yeah.
courage
Yeah.
to
It would
just
take,
throw away everything, like everything you believed was a lie, or even just a few things that you believed was a lie. A lot of people can't make that step. They
it,
really can't. They
it's
haven't the courage to do that.
it's very hard to get a man to understand something if his salary depends upon him not understanding that thing. And
That's another thing, and that's the whole basis of virology, isn't it? I mean, virology is the whole crux of the $1.5 trillion pharmaceutical industry.
yeah, that's a small number. I would say it's probably conservative. And I think that the reality is they're probably packing in a lot more trillions than that. But
Yeah.
I
No.
think that it is hard for people to understand something if to understand that would mean that now they have to look at their wife or husband or
Yeah.
their close friend, their mom and dad, their family, and know that they know something, that they were wrong about something, probably, that they know this now, but to explain it to those people that they love so much feels like an onerous task. So they can't even go there because their emotional salary is dependent upon them believing the same. It's like, it's basically like coming to that idea, like where someone has been always going to church and speaking about Jesus and their testimony. And then they have an ayahuasca journey. And then they actually feel a lot more practically face to face connected with some energetic phenomenon that they cannot explain, but they know that it changes the perspective. And now what can they say? It's just scary. It's like a new perspective change, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that sounds like almost that you might vibe with that ayahuasca type example, huh?
Well, I mean, I know that people's worlds are going to be shattered that have completely invested in these psyops, and religion is just another psyop. You know, if you look at it logically and carefully, a lot of these doctrines were just indoctrination tactics through the centuries of the church. And that's something that's going to blow people's minds. But, you know, the truth is the truth. And sooner or later, that's why I say bravery is such a, and humility. I think they're the two key things that you really need if you're going to find the truth.
Yeah, and
And critical thinking, of course. But
yeah,
even to embark on the whole critical thinking method, you have to have a certain amount of bravery and humility in the first place.
right, right. I think you have to have a reason to go there. That's what I would try to say. And I've just been wanting to
Yeah.
communicate this stuff to
Yeah.
my best friend recently,
Yeah.
where,
Yeah.
you know, because he went down the other way. He went down the fear and the getting vaccinated and the route of just buying the mainstream media version back in 2000,
Yeah. Yeah.
back in
Well, it's a fear mongering thing. And fear is basically the root of fear is a lack of understanding, a lack of knowledge.
But since that time, on his own, he found Russell Brand, who obviously is a gateway drug to a different perspective.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
obviously,
Yeah.
that meant that there was some open mindedness. And since that time, there was an open mindedness to other things that are important, like how to make harmony in the marriage, you know, and that's kind of a practical kind of thing. So I was able to share something in that direction, you know, in terms of like communication skills that were like all instantly a hit, meaning like, you know, like I shared it and like instead of getting like the blow off reaction, it was the hungry for more action, you know? And so I'm
Sure.
going to try to follow up and see how far we can go together, you know?
Yeah. That sounds great. That's what we have to do, really.
It's one person at a
Um,
time, you know? That's what it is. So
it's all we could do. Well, Darrell, I know you have to go, but it's been great. Thanks for coming on again.
yeah, thank you. And just gonna throw out, you know, for sure, you know, try to get all the shows up there on contentsafe.co. And yeah, I would say if you like the way I handle stuff, you can go ahead, reach out for a free 15-minute consultation. I could be voluntaryvisions@gmail.com. That's my secret email. And just mention the Mark Tassi Show. I'll go ahead and I'll help you out.
So,
And
so how do people contact you? That's important
that would be
before you go.
voluntaryvisions@gmail.com. That's my little thing. But yeah, if you want that free 15 minutes, just mention Mark Tassi right there in the subject, and I'll go ahead and do my best to help you out. And thank you so much, Mark. It's been great to be back.
Okay, Darrell, good to see you again.
All right. Thanks, Mark.